Welcome to Sports Chat. I'm your host, Matt Muncie.
And this is Brock again.
Tonight we're going to do a Super Bowl recap. We're going to kind of give our take on what we saw and do also the surroundings of the Super Bowl, not just the game itself. The first thing we're going to hit on is the events leading up to the Super Bowl and even Super Bowl day. You know, you had all the people camping out before the game. You had the 6 people hurt by ice falling off the roof of Dallas Cowboy Stadium.
In all fairness, that wasn't really Dallas's fault, but they faced all the same kind of weather that the rest of the country did, and those injuries were not necessarily something they had planned on, but it did screw up a lot of things when it came to game day. So
it was kind of good for the NFL to see that, because it just so happened that same week Indy got hit with an ice storm. Now they kind of know what to expect next year in case we get a ton of snow and we get a ton of ice again. They can at least be prepared. So all that happened, which then you said led to the closing of 4 entrances at Cowboy Stadium,
which led to massive delays in getting people into the stadium.
Yeah, some people waited up to an hour and 20 minutes, probably even longer. I haven't seen anything else. That was the highest amount of time I had seen. And then if you're one of the unlucky 1,250 people who, when they got there, were told that their tickets were not valid, their seats were not ready for them. So with the 1,250 people, their section wasn't ready. Up to 2 hours before game time, they were trying to put it together. They couldn't do it. They couldn't figure it out. So they were able to take 850 of those people and relocate them somewhere else in the stadium. The other 400 people were kind of left out to dry. They were told that they could go sit, in some little grassy field area and watch the game on some big screens. Then some were put into another area. Oh, it was like a party area. It was standing room only, and they were on a couple of corners of the stadium. They were allowed to go there. So some people at least got to be inside the stadium kinda and see the game.
But here's the thing. Even before all that stuff happened, you had people being rerouted, obviously, like you said, with the tickets. They were told their tickets were invalid. Well, they basically got handed off back and forth. I heard even some individuals ended up at Rangers Stadium somehow to meet with the NFL official and never found out any more information. And they just kept getting jockeyed back and forth. And after like 3 hours, they still didn't know any more about what was going on other than the NFL had said, basically, they don't have seats.
True, but in the long run, I think these 400 fans made out somewhat well. They were refunded at triple face value, so everyone got $2,400 back. On top of that, they were given free merchandise. I read they were given free food and beverages. I don't know if that's true. I heard a contradictory report on that on a Sports Talk radio today that they were not given free food and drinks. They had to pay for their own food and drinks. They were also allowed to go onto the field after the game. Kind of cool to make up for it. Then on top of that, all 400 fans were given tickets to next year's Super Bowl.
Here's the bigger issue, and it really comes down to this. Yes, they got tickets to next year's game. Yes, they got reimbursed $2,400. How much money do you think these people actually paid?
Well, yes, I know. There's some people that said they paid $3,000 for the tickets themselves.
I heard $4,000. I heard $4,000 for accommodations and flight. And
and I'm sure it was a lot, and that's why I said the $2,400 for one ticket isn't going to make up for a lot of it. And I understand the NFL's trying to make up for it. Huge debacle. At least Indy now knows. Let's not. I mean, we couldn't break the NFL record anyways. But let's not try and do anything ridiculous. Let's keep it simple and just go with it. Then the game starts, or the pre-game starts, and we get the singing of the national anthem by Christina Aguilera. So, she gets up there, she sings the first 3 lines. The 4th line, which is supposed to be "O'er the ramparts we watched, we're so gallantly streaming," she decides to sing "What so proudly we watched at the twilight's last gleaming." So she put line 2 and line 4 together. She's sang this so many times in her life. How do you mess this up?
The key to doing the national anthem well is, you can add a little bit of style to it, but don't screw up what's already there. I don't care if you have to have a piece of paper in front of you. At least know what words you're singing so you don't screw up one of the biggest, one of the greatest songs in America on one of the biggest stages you could possibly imagine.
Exactly. And her response was, "I got so lost in the moment of the song that I lost my place."
She's already sung in a Super Bowl. I believe it was like 2001. She sang in the halftime show at one of the Super Bowls. So
Well,
she's been on the
she
stage
just
before.
sang the national anthem at two NBA finals this last year. So she's already been on a pretty big stage sporting venue wise with that many people. So it to me it's hard to believe. I understand if you get caught up in the moment, but to butcher the line that bad.
I sincerely believe she feels bad about screwing it up. But the biggest problem is she was trying to put her own flair on it. And if you're on that in that circumstance, there's been very few people who have been able to put their own unique flair on it without kind of messing it up.
Yeah. So then we actually get into the game. Turned out to be a really good game. Not amazing, but it was still good on its own level. And looking in the first quarter, the first couple drives, you can tell teams were just kind of seeing what the other team was bringing, and then we come to the first score. Aaron Rodgers hits Jordy Nelson deep on the right side for a 29-yard touchdown. So they score the touchdown. Crosby with the extra point. They go up 7-0, and they kick the ball off. Ensuing play, Ben Roethlisberger trying to hit Mike Wallace, who is his go-to guy, is intercepted by Nick Collins, and Collins takes it back for a 37-yard touchdown. So there you go. Right off the bat, Packers kicking in gear. They're up 14-0. And, we saw this with the Steelers against the Ravens. And
Well, and here's the other thing: the Packers, did the same thing against the Bears. They had a really great first quarter. I mean, Rodgers was hitting full tilt. Defense was making big plays. Everybody was really doing their part. And when it actually, as the game went on, that's the last time the offense was able to score was the first quarter. And I wasn't very optimistic after they went up 14-0 because I was like, well, I saw what happened with the Bears game last week. Steelers defense should be able to pull the same kind of stuff. So
exactly. So then we move, that ends the first quarter. Green Bay's up 14-0. First drive of the second quarter, Steelers get down, and Sean Shusham, I don't know how to say his last name, got a kicked a 33-yard field goal. Green Bay's Donald Driver gets knocked out of the game on
which was hard because I mean, knowing how loyal Driver has been one of the great Packers over the past
13 years.
13 years, and it was really hard to watch him go down because you see Driver as when they were talking about winning it for the old guys, Driver was one of those old guys that they were winning for.
Exactly. So then on the Steelers second drive, Roethlisberger, trying to go to Wallace again. This time gets picked off by Jared Bush, and that leads to a Greg Jennings 21-yard touchdown. Rodgers threw it right down the middle, and off to the races he was. So you're up 21-3. I think that touchdown deflated everyone. Every Steeler fan, I think it deflated them because the Steelers just didn't look in sync. They just did not look ready to play. It just seemed like.
Well,
And with the depleted roster that Green Bay had and the defense that Pittsburgh has, like it just, I don't know.
but
Questions.
you got to think the Packers have put so much pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and I think the level of defense that was being brought in the first half, especially with Charles Woodson still in the game, was really screwing with the rhythm that Roethlisberger was trying to get into. Mendenhall, got some good runs, and he was actually doing decently, but they just couldn't get the passing game going.
Yeah, and like you said, with Woodson in there, they dominated, and he goes out, part of the way through the second quarter, which then after they have two picks, Roethlisberger has a horrible QB rating.
His QB rating with Woodson in the game was 31.9.
52.9 completions, and the score difference was plus 18. So, you just sometimes you just don't see that. Woodson leaves in the second quarter, and then the Steelers get their first touchdown. And funny enough, Ben Roethlisberger hits Hines Ward. Hines Ward is his, the guy that you throw it to when you're desperate, because he's gonna make that catch, and then he's just gonna plow over everyone because he's one of the toughest wide receivers I think the game's ever seen.
I thought it was nice, and especially our friend Kenny, is a big fan of Antoine Randall. And
Yeah,
Antoine Randall came into the game and was making some serious plays for the Steelers.
but the beautiful thing on the Hines Ward touchdown, he was being guarded by Jarrett Bush, who had just picked off Roethlisberger on the previous drive. When he gets to the end zone, he does three jukes and then is wide open by himself. That's all. How old is this guy? And how young is Jared Bush?
The problem was not necessarily a guy juked, but really because he just stopped following Hines Ward on the play. He didn't think the play was going towards Hines Ward. He abandoned Ward on the play, and Ward was completely wide open straight down the middle. I mean, it was pretty academic after that.
Yeah, and I mean that's legit. But I still feel Hines Ward fooled him because he was still trailing him while he was getting juked. If you watch that video, he's still trailing him as he's getting juked. And on that final juke to the right, there's just nothing but open space, and he's basically all by himself. So that basically ends the half. So then we get to the halftime show. I mean, we can't leave the halftime show out of this at all.
Uh,
But it was so bad. I mean, we don't have to go in depth, but it was bad. It was probably one of the worst halftime shows.
they continually try to go for a demographic, and it's just they either go too old or too young, but they don't hit the sweet spot, and they don't hit the football demographic. I
No,
think that's the biggest issue.
because you
And
think of football, the football demographic is going to be men. Most men who are watching football are not listening to the Black Eyed Peas.
or Usher.
And Slash would have made that had Fergie not done her best Axl Rose voice. And then you have on top of that, you have the Tron suits that they're wearing, which was just horrible. You have the
See,
auto tune.
I thought that was kind of cool. I really have to say, if you're just watching for a aesthetic point of view, I thought it was rather entertaining. I mean, I think the effects that they went for were very good. I don't personally, I didn't enjoy the performance whatsoever.
No,
Well, I guess my issue was the sound was screwed up on Fergie's mic.
no. Oh well, who is
They
it? Will
screwed up the
Will is that
sound the
guy's
whole
name?
time.
Will I am. He,
Yeah,
you could hear in his mic that they had it auto tuned. Like every time he kept going, every time he kept singing, there was like this auto tune in the mic.
I don't want to say it was a terrible choice, but it was definitely not reflective of, if you're a Black Eyed Peas fan, you probably enjoyed it because they did their hits.
Yeah,
My issue was, number one, it wasn't really entertaining to anybody who's not really a Black Eyed Peas fan. Usher, I guess he brought some appeal to it. All in all, I really didn't feel like it was at all what football fans wanted to see.
not even remotely close.
The question is the halftime show for football fans? Or are
I'm
you
gonna go
thinking
with
most?
no because if most, I'm gonna assume most football fans are probably up, drinking, using the bathroom, getting food. They're not watching the halftime show.